All right, I'm going to get going here. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for coming today. My name is Tommy Johnson. I'm with the Portland Regional Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to today's Eaton Peabody's Growth Basics for Business, our monthly breakfast seminar series, which provides a forum to gain useful, do-it-yourself workplace solutions and insightful, actionable tips. We have another great presentation for you today with a topic that resounds with everyone, virtual fatigue, refocusing your team's creativity, presented by Francis Eberle. This is our largest growth basics to date, with over 100 people registered. I'm sure there's many others that could benefit from this presentation as well. And like all the Chamber's signature events, today's presentation will be recorded and made available for replay on the Chamber's website and YouTube page. To keep up to date on all the Chamber's news and events, please visit our website, portlandregion.com, check out our events page, and sign up for our weekly email newsletter. Now, before we get started into our presentation, I want to ask you all to mute yourself, and if you wish, turn your cameras off. If you have questions for our presenter, please type them in the chat function, and I will be relaying them to him. At this point, I'd like to acknowledge our presenting sponsor of Growth Basics for Business, Eaton Peabody. For the past 3 years, Eaton Peabody has been the exclusive sponsor of this series, and I'd like to invite Marketing Manager Nate Levesque to say a few words.
Thank you, Tommy. I'm Nate Levesque, the Marketing Manager for Eaton Peabody. I want to thank everyone for taking the time to join us today. I'm a huge fan of these events. I've attended every one of them, and I always learn something new. I'm sure I'll be learning a thing or two from Francis today. For those of you that do not know Eaton Peabody, we are a full-service law firm based in Maine with more than 50 attorneys serving Maine clients from offices in Augusta, Bangor, Brunswick, Ellsworth, and Portland. Whether you're an established company looking to grow or a small business just looking for guidance, we can help. To learn more about our services, visit our website, eatonpeabody.com, and follow us on Facebook to stay up to date with legal updates and see what other events that we'll be hosting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nate. And I'd be remiss if I didn't always mention that when we do start having these events live again, Nate provides the best breakfast spread, the best coffee, and the best treats. So once we come out of the COVID pandemic and we go back to live events, I do encourage you to attend these live. Nate puts on a good show when we gather over his place. Now onto our presentation. Francis Eberle, Ph.D. of Price Associates, helps leaders from the private and public sector grow by increasing their confidence and expertise. He's a thought leader, an author, and executive coach supporting effective leaders and organizations. With over 25 years as an executive, Francis knows that it is people who are key to improving strategy, culture, and performance. He's coached leaders and teams to improve their skills, solve complex problems, grow financial and programmatic resources, and engage partners to work together. Francis is also a member of the Association for Consulting Expertise, ACE. And this season, we've partnered with ACE to bring content in the form of blogs and event facilitation like Growth Basics. And I'd like to thank them again. And now, please join me in welcoming our presenter, Dr. Francis Eberle.
Thank you, Tommy, and welcome everybody. I'm glad to see so many people. It's really quite exciting. I hope you're all well and staying safe. Tommy did the honor of doing a little bit of introduction on me. And what I want to say just to start off is that since the pandemic has started, so it's really been a year now, maybe a little more. I've begun to notice people's behavior has started to change. Not everyone, but some people in particular. So some high energy people seem to be a little less, sort of motivated or sort of expressive as they've been in the past. And at the same time, people who maybe were a little bit more reserved have all of a sudden come on much stronger. They seem to be a little more decisive and clear. So it just was a curious thing. So I started to do some little research on my own to try to understand what's going on. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about. So the creativity part gets woven through, and a lot of these things that we'll go through are actually good in person too. So, and since returning to Maine, you heard what Tommy was saying. That's what I've been working on. I've worked in a startup. I led a startup and then led another organization and then a large association in DC. Oh, I know. One last thing before I get into content. There is a book giveaway for this session. So I did just publish a book. It's called Connected Leadership, Engaging Your Workforce to Lead Themselves. And so if you're on this program today, you'll be in the pool for that drawing, and that'll occur afterwards. So little content. Anybody find today's session a little ironic? Here we are talking about video fatigue, and where are we? Right, we're on video. Seems a little odd, and so I was thinking about that, and I just thought, well, okay, let's see what we can do. So let's mix it up a little bit, and I'd like to go to my slides, and we'll start here. Can everybody see that? Actually, maybe I should ask Tommy.
Yeah, I can see it, Francis.
All right, let me get the slide. There we go. Okay, so you see this whole range of pictures here. What I'd like you to do right now is look at the pictures and pick one that kind of tells you or resonates with you about how you're feeling today. Could be about the topic, could be just because it's Tuesday, sunny, whatever, whether you're a snow lover or not, and put it in the chat. Just put it in the chat, which picture. And if you're really brave, you might want to chat and put a little note in there about why you picked that picture. So I'll just wait and monitor the chat and see what goes in there. Okay, rock and a hard place. Tiger, rolling down the road. Highway with no end. Sunflower, shining in my window. Yeah, it is a sunny day today. 5 girls celebrating. It is a hopeful moment. The dog, rock balancing. Pup. The onlooking squirrel. Lost dog. Sunflowers again. Well, good. So there's some real optimism here for some of you. That's just wonderful. At the same time, there are some that are sort of questioning, and that's really what we're doing here in this mode of Zoom, right? We're sort of wondering what the next phase is, and what's added to all of this, of course, is the virus and how that is so unknown, right? So we have to think a little differently about this. So I'm going to go to another slide. Here we go. And you get another opportunity to put things in chat. So this is a box, and I put that pen in front of it to show you the size of this box. And my wife is creative, and so she made this box. She's also, and I'm giving you some background about this box because I want you to put in chat what you think might be inside this box. Right. So she's a very organized person. She likes to put things away. So anybody want to take a stab at guessing what might be in this box? Okay, pens, paper clips, another box. Okay, pet ashes. Oh, that's a good one. Beautiful jewelry, photos, pens, rings, sweet memories. Okay, letters, marbles, personal items. Okay, so I'm going to stop. I'll give you another clue. It's also functional. The item in there is functional. Okay, and I'll give you one more on top of that, which is, okay, eyeglasses. All right, pens, refills. So far, no one's gotten there. When you get it, I'll let you know. Ken Riffey Junior rookie card. Okay, masks, paintbrushes, glasses again. It goes in a particular room of the house. Does that help? Oh, okay, I'm gonna have to stop. Where are we? Someone got it. Janet here, looks like. So here it is. So Janet got it. Remote control. Actually, maybe Paula beat her. I don't know. They're both very, very close. So good job. That's what goes in here. Now, the purpose for doing what I just did is to sort of change the paradigm of starting a video call, right? Most often when you're in a Zoom meeting, you go into the room and you jump into the agenda. So if you want to get people's thinking a little differently, and I have to say you did pretty well on this list in terms of the kinds of ideas that you were coming up with, you need to be sort of prompt and change the thinking, open the minds, do something a little different, and some people say it's like getting their heads in the room, getting them to think about what actually is going on and helping them think a little differently. So that's the point of these kinds of things. This box idea also works as 20 questions, which with, I don't know, 60 or 80 people here wasn't exactly going to work. But you could have a person bring an item for each meeting and maybe take a couple of minutes and do a 20 questions as a way to start the meeting off in a different way. And different people get to do this. So just a thought. Okay, so here's where we're going today. This is the agenda. We're in the introduction right now. We'll talk a little bit about the challenges and why this is a problem for us, because it's a human thing. It's not any of you individually that you're not doing something right because of you. It really has to do with that whereas people, we don't communicate as the same virtually as we do in person. So how to communicate, some do's and don'ts, or some issues around that, and then ideas and resources. So also at the end of this, there are some resources I'll be I think it's Andrew or Tommy will send out to you with more ideas. So you'll have some things that you can walk away if you don't have a chance to take the notes here. So going big picture, just really quickly, there are three big ideas you want to be thinking about. If you're sort of the leader, if you're of an organization, you want to make sure people are operating better. So mindset's one. Is everybody really ready for this? Do they support it? And you'll see why that comes in. Also policies, processes, and tools, and then capabilities. Do they have the skills and behavior, or do you need to have some training related to this? So let's look at the challenges. And with each of these, I'm going to talk a little bit about why, and then perhaps some solutions, and then I'll stop at the end with some to see if you have any questions. So one of the challenges with this is there's fewer contacts when you're in the virtual world, right? You used to be able to walk or talk across the room or across a desk or walk over, down the hall and go talk to somebody. You can't really do that. Sure, you can do Slack and other kinds of instant messaging sorts of things, but that pattern of being able to sort of go around just doesn't happen, right? So how do you deal with that? There are structures you can put in place. I just recently was talking to a company that had regular team meetings a couple of times a week, sort of check-ins, update meetings. I think you're all familiar with update meetings. And what they've decided is they've gone to huddles instead. So they've reduced the number of team meetings and went to huddles, sort of with a Scrum or Agile model, and just do very quick meetings. And the point of it is that everybody gets a chance to express what's going on, why, and actually reduce the number of team meetings. So in whole, they've got roughly the same amount of time, but in different structures. So think about what works best for you and your organization. What would be best in terms of the structure for teams? You may need to have more or less in different structures. Okay, so the next one is mixed teams. And what I mean by that is remote, non-remote, hybrid, which means some people would be remote, some are in the office, or maybe it's an all remote organization. This is tricky because there are dangers of sort of miscommunication or talking to some people in person, whereas the remote people didn't hear that. So let's say you're going to have a meeting, and so the people in person gather into the room, and something is said there that the remote people haven't started the meeting yet. So essentially they get left out. They're not part of the official meeting. So be really deliberate about how you think about what you say and when, and making sure that those remote folks are all actually included, so they're not being left out. Boundaries. So we all know about this, right? We've learned all kinds of situations where boundaries worked or didn't work, but be really clear about what they are. When do you have breaks? When do you monitor yourself? When do you have your end of your day? Who establishes it? So let's say you set a schedule of, you're not going to contact anybody after, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever time you want to choose, but stick to it. Don't start breaking it, because I can guarantee it'll be challenged. People will go and, go beyond it, or it's in a certain time in the morning, or maybe you have breaks from 12 to 2 or something, so people can have lunch, go for a walk, run, whatever, get outside. But be really deliberate about the boundaries with which you can set, and that will have people more relaxed and comfortable in this virtual world. Next one, gender. This one is kind of an interesting one, good and bad news here. So related to gender, that it's really, the research has found that women are related to better and are clearer and listened to more in this virtual world. It's not exactly clear why, but really if you think about what you see in the virtual world is just heads, right? You don't see the whole person. Leaders at the same time, and this is where maybe it comes from, leaders are not as quite as, their authority doesn't seem to be as strong, right? Because everybody's sort of the same level, everybody's the same. So there are opportunities here to take advantage of this and making sure that everyone has an equal voice and is able to share their ideas and participate in their ideas. So here's the really bad news related to this. This is nationally, I don't have any main data related to this, but more women are sacrificing their jobs because of the home responsibilities than men, right? So they're taking on childcare or other kinds of home responsibilities or family care, and so from worst case, women giving up their jobs to take this responsibility, or going part-time, or really managing it. And we've seen these with either it could be pets or could be children, but getting into the scene and into the thing, and it's distracting for them as well as everybody else in the meeting. It's just uncomfortable. Well, so now think about this from a performance perspective. If you're looking for somebody and you need to give a promotion, or you need to get someone who's being most participatory in the group, right? So who's going to get that? The people that have the full attention. So if you're also juggling all kinds of other things, you're not going to be in that same pipeline. So if you're a leader, you really need to pay attention to the issue around gender and making sure you can make either individual adaptations, because if you're losing women or a woman on your team, you're losing some creatives. And so you really need to be focused and paying attention to this. And we'll talk more about what that means in terms of being flexible. So consistency, the next one. Agendas, time, materials, meetings, keep them consistent. So for example, if you have a 10 o'clock meeting, let's say, just making it up. If all of a sudden you change it to 11:30 and somebody who's remote has decided that 11 is when they go for their walk, you've disrupted their schedule and they're going to be messed up. You're not going to have their participation. So you're just trying to be consistent. This is where you wouldn't be flexible. So these are the times for the meetings. People can plan for it if they've got other responsibilities. Again, could be childcare, but other responsibilities. And they can plan around the actual meetings and making sure that they can participate in those. And there's issues of communication. And we'll have an activity a little bit about communication, but I do want to say something that I should have mentioned a little earlier, and it has to do with boundaries and mixed teams and actually consistency too. But when you gather people for brainstorming, and one of the things that's been very clear is that there's an advantage to virtual in the sense that it's better to have individuals come up with lists of ideas and then bring it and pool them together and let everybody react to those. So this idea of brainstorming in a whole group, in person or otherwise, isn't as effective as if you let individuals do it first, because there's a safety issue, and that falls into the next category, right? So if you're, and it's trust, if you're going to make some crazy wild idea or maybe challenge the boss, right? The boss's ideas, and propose a solution, you have to know that you're not going to get criticized or there's going to be some repercussions for what you say. So there has to be strong trust within the organization, and particularly as a virtual, because you can't actually see the person. The body language is different. The, voice often is very different. So it's really important to build this trust. It takes time, but there has to be full transparency about what's going to happen and why. And you're going to get much more creative solutions. So a little bit of more background on this. Google did a 3-year study on the highly effective team. There was one characteristic that was by far the characteristic for those teams, and it was trust. It wasn't dollars. It wasn't the number of high performers, the size of the team, but trust and friendship amongst those team members. And I just want to note this part about friendship. This notion of personal and work crossing over and overlapping, that's a trend. And we need to pay attention to that because with the virtual world, that gets more and more characteristic. And then just some further information about this sort of supporting people's personal lives. There was a survey done in 2020 related to Gartner's Reimagine Employees, and they found that employers that did support their people in being flexible in a lot of the areas that I just went through, saw a 23% increase in employees reporting better mental health, 17% better physical health, and a 21% increase in the number of high performers compared to those companies that didn't. So it really does pay. So I'm going to stop. That was a lot that I just sort of threw at you. So any questions here on this? And I'm going to look in the chat, or Tommy, maybe you can look in the chat.
Yeah, we don't have any specific questions yet, Francis.
Okay.
Oh, hold on, Francis. Francis, we just got a question from Ellen. When you say supportive, what do you mean specifically?
It depends on the individual. It could be related to schedule. It could be related to equipment. So an example, this is my daughter who lived here for 5 months. She's been remote for over a year. And they did a whole survey of, their company did a whole survey of what she was doing, her desk, so the ergonomics, the computers, the cameras, so that she was well equipped to handle the remote. At the same time, they also had flexible time. So she was working, late at night, but would go for trips during the day. I was a little amazed myself, but they were really very clear about when the expectations were and what they would, what their expectations were related to the particular work. So it's going to have to be somewhat different depending on what the situation is. I don't know if I hope that answers your question. Okay, so yeah, so there's Chris that asks about, people look different on video. Does this impact others? Yes. And actually there's a psychological or a biological thing that's going on with video. When you look at somebody, and sometimes it's hard to do on video, you're actually not getting the same kind of human connection as that's another person as you would in real life. And so it's not that you look different, but that your response in your head is, okay, this person is not quite the same as the real person. So I'm not quite sure how to respond. And then in a brainstorming session, what do you recommend is the best way to participants to submit ideas? So just have it, have one person collect them, summarize them, and then you post those in the group together. So just have them go one place. And then Arthur, so that in-person meeting, we all have time to establish connections, context, trust. An online meeting, it just starts, without any social warm up. You're absolutely right. Think about, you walk into a room and you're going to have a meeting in the in-person world, right? So you may hear conversation, you may hear laughter, you may see people talking across each other. You might see people hugging or perhaps shaking hands or, touching on the shoulder or arm, saying hi, little chit chat, and then things, everybody sort of sits down and there's still further chit chat going on. That doesn't happen. So that's why in the beginning of the meetings, it's helpful to try to understand and do something a little differently to get people thinking in ways where they relate to each other. And I'll give you some more ideas about that. Yeah, so here's Ellen says, we often start off all staff meetings, 75 people. So that's similar to this morning with a breakout of small groups of 4. Great. That's really terrific. And Rachel talks about a document for brainstorming, for sharing meetings. Yeah. Good. If you want to share that, I'm not sure whether I don't know. That's great. So some of you are doing this, which is wonderful. I'm really glad to see that. A lot of this is that we've adapted. We're all doing this. We're figuring this out ourselves. So I want to just go to the next slide. This is just really too much to go over. I'm not going to go through it, but what I wanted you to highlight is think of the different ways in which people work. So there's real-time communication. There's communicating synchronously. I can't even say it. Synchronously. Well, I'll keep moving. So sharing content, staying organized, and thinking visually. There's some, comes from Mural, and I'll talk more about them, but there's some recommended products. So 2 points here. One is be deliberate about how you're communicating. Email doesn't work for everything. Zoom doesn't work for everything, or whatever the video product is. I'm not making recommendations of these products. Actually, I use some different ones, but it's their point. But what I wanted to show you here with this list is if you go to the here is that this goes to Arthur's question. See everybody smile and hear everybody's voice when you meet, right? These are the things that are going to help you with your creatives or creating energy in your room, in your meeting room, that if you just jump in, you won't. Getting a community going, try some other things, right? Some of you doing this all right with, I was talking to a company that talked about they did taboo and they did potlucks and things like that. Ways to connect connections that you couldn't do in other ways. And then down here at the bottom, think visually. Visually is a really great way to get people thinking a little differently. And there's some new products out that will help you do that. Whiteboards work on Zoom, but it's a little stilted. It's a little tricky. Okay, so I'm going to take a break here. And I'm going to stop sharing and we're going to do an activity. So it will work best if you could turn your video on and if you could find me, but you can also just listen. I'm going to give you some directions and all you need is a piece of paper. And this piece of paper, you're not going to be able to use after you're done. So, and what we're going to do is I'm going to give you some directions related to the piece of paper. And then I'm going to ask you to hold it up in front of you. So that's why the video will help. And if you're still in your, pajamas, you can hold it up at the last and no one will see what you're wearing because the paper is going to block your camera. All right. So with your piece of paper, this really has to do with communication. So I'm going to give you some directions. So take your piece of paper. You can find me. I know where I am, but that's, and fold it in half. Just fold it in half. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. Now, once it's in half, rip off the top right corners. So just tear off the top right corner. So you hold it straight, however you want to do it, and rip the top right corner. Okay, so fold it again. Fold it in half again. And this time, rip off the bottom right corner. So same thing, just rip off the bottom right corner. Okay, fold it again. This time, rip off the top left corner. And if you're you've got strong fingers, you can try folding it again and ripping a corner. It gets pretty thick by this time. All right, so now I want you to do is unfold it and hold it up to the screen. And I want everybody to look at the images on the screen. Tell me what you see. You might want to hold it up close so you can see. Okay. And if you're watching, you can click on these little arrows on the side and see what other people are doing if they're also holding it up. Looks like the one screen, you got people holding them up. All right, so anybody want to put into chat? Actually, can you hold them up once more? All right, take a good look. So anybody want to put in the chat what you see? I mean, is it the same? I mean, I thought my directions were pretty clear, right? I asked you to fold it and rip a corner. That's all I asked you to do. Yeah, all different, wonderfully different. Some were almost not pieces of paper anymore. Yeah, so great. This is a really simple thing. And the reason I wanted to point this out is, when we say something in person or virtually, people interpret it in their fashion. So even though I gave you simple instructions, they may not have been as clear as it seemed. And so what do you do related to this? So it's really important in the virtual world because there's no body language. It's really hard to see if people are questioning you, or they have that puzzled look, or, you're not clear about what actually is going on. So ways to prevent this is to ask for feedback, right? So did you hear, or what do you think our next steps are? Or let's review and go over what we just talked about and tell me what you heard. Or, there's a whole range of kinds of things that you can ask for. In terms of feedback, I do want to say, be really specific. If you just say, so what did we talk about? Or, did you get this general point? It's not always as helpful. And I'll hit on this one more time. So the point I'm trying to make with this activity is simple. Just that be really conscious of what you're saying and make sure people really understand, because they may not. All right, so I'm going to go back to the slides. And just quickly, some do's and don'ts here. Some of this is review. We've talked about, location neutral. You might even host your, if you've got some that are low, in the office and some are not, have your host in a remote location so that they feel like they're participating in the group and not out there, not being a part of it. Or we talked about the frequency and stability of meetings, so I don't need to do that again. The feedback. So related to this, what I wanted to say is, you need to be, it's two ways. One is you need to get feedback if you're leading a team, right? So how am I doing is just not, it's just like, what do you do that if people go fine, right? There's not much you can do with that. So you might say something more specific, like, how am I doing in terms of being clear about the expectations after we leave, right? So that is a much more specific one. Or how was the pace of the meeting? Or was the agenda too many items? So those are things where you can actually get better feedback. And then it goes the other way too, giving other people feedback about how they're doing, right? You can't just depend normally. And this is all about being transparent and much more explicit about what actually people are doing and what they're saying. So providing breathing space. This one is, can be everything from, mindfulness. Some people start meetings with a little bit of 2 minutes of silence or a minute of silence. Some people, and this is, this was the comment earlier about starting up a meeting right with the agenda. and it's part of it is the awkwardness of the video, but allow for some breathing space in there. That helps you creatives. And then take care of people and adapt to work preferences. So you need to know what your people are, what's going on there, and know them well enough. And then managing pace. This is one where people have been quite productive during this period on video and remote, but it's exhausting because they're managing everything and they aren't taking the breaks themselves. I often joke just in terms of commute so where I am right now is upstairs in my house. So when I go downstairs, I joke with, if there's anybody down there, my wife or others, just that my commute was really rough today. So there's no breaks in the day. There's no way to sort of transition people's minds from work to home. So whether it's a commute or it's, lunch or others, it just doesn't exist. So you can't expect to be everyone moving at the same pace. So just be a little more, be a little more flexible, but at the same time, there will of course be spurts of energy where things have to be done. It's an urgent thing, but if it's urgent all the time, that will be exhausting and people won't be able to keep up. And then last, I mentioned this before, a little playfulness, and we'll see some examples. Okay. So we're getting into the real specifics about some things you can do. Now, I don't want to go through all these. Are there some that you have specific wonderings about and I can address? So you're going to get a handout that has a whole list. There's like 25 icebreakers, those sort of casual things in the beginning. Any other questions about what's on the list? Potluck. Yeah, so that's food. People do like food. It's people bring their own meals and sit around and eat them. Or you can share recipes and they make parts of the meal or aspects. So you can sort of be creative. It's a combination. Virtual escape room. Yeah, I just found this one recently. There's two things going on there. So people are being innovative. There are companies now that offer virtual escape rooms. So you can book it, and they say you can have up to 10,000 people. So maybe the person that had the 75 could try it. But what you do is you book the room, and they put you in groups of, I think, 4 to 8, somewhere in there. And they take you through the room, and you're in your own groups, and you can ask questions and do support. So if you've ever done it in person, it's a similar. It's not exactly the same, obviously, but it's similar. And there's another company that says you can create your own escape room. So if you're really creative and you want to create your own, you can do that. Bucket list guessing. So here you just have people list 5 things, 10 things, whatever number you want of things on their bucket list. Have one person collect them. And then at each meeting, read one of the lists and have people guess who it is and why they think it is. And so each meeting you get a little bit of fun and connection with people. So this person, Kylie, talks about having music before each meeting. Great. These are the things that they seem really silly, but actually it really helps people connect and be relaxed. It's sort of like people wondering whether they're wearing the right thing necessarily, or maybe not, but or how do they look on the camera and whether they look the same or not. So just being a little more just, okay, we're here, we're going to cope with this, and let's be relaxed. Poker Face is a game, and that's in the web resource list. And all of those are web sites or companies that have websites where you can go on and book a game. Poker Face is playing poker, and each person in the group, it has a face there's like a virtual table and a poker game in the middle, and you get your team are the faces in that. I do want to say a couple of things about the orange ones here. And these are different. So Workplace Less, it's actually, if you wanted to go look, check them out, it's workplaceless.com. And it's a company that now is specializing in helping companies adapt to this. And so they're fully remote. They have training that they'll provide if you're interested in that, and other sorts of things. And Mural, I mentioned them earlier with those grids. That's another company that is really doing some innovative things. They have an app that you can add to Zoom or other video programs where you can use sticky notes. And so you're able to have sticky notes up there and people can type things on them. They can move them around. So for brainstorming, it would be an interesting way to do that. Or if you've got some prioritization project that you want to do and you want to be able to do that. The one thing I'll say related to that is if you go to some new piece of technology, make sure you're really good at it before you roll it out, because you can spend a lot of time just, problem solving and you get nothing done. So that's just the one caveat I'd say there. And, the last ones, Teams, Monday, Trello, et cetera, those are all project, of course, Teams does video too, but project management, and they're also innovating. So they're starting to integrate new kinds of functions. Whatever you find useful to you. And I will say that, again, the same caveat with these is if you're going to jump around, I'd actually recommend not doing that. Pick with something that everybody's comfortable with and it works for you, rather than trying to necessarily go for the newest thing. Okay. Any other questions on what's on this list? Okay. So there's also an app, these viewing parties. So if you want, and these are more casual after work, where you can watch a TV show together or something. Okay, great. So we'll move on. So just to wrap up, and then I just want to leave some time for questions and answers, and hopefully I can provide you answers. That this gave you a sense of the big picture being, what's your capacity to do this, but also some specific things that you can do. So the follow-up will include this list of icebreakers, also kind of a procedural thing about remote meetings. And I think Andrea said she'd also send out this article. So if some of you are really interested in pushing the limits, it's about using improv as a way to loosen up your meetings. And these slides, I think, will be also available. So other questions at this point? Yeah, have I had an experience with any of the VR game platforms groups are using for meetings? I heard one set in the Wild West and wanted to know if you knew others. I don't personally. I use some virtual platforms for exercise, Zwift, but they're quite remarkable. The kinds of things that you can experience is really interesting. The point of them, and that's the other piece of this, is to think about the purpose. Why would you do it? And it could be a retreat sort of thing, or it could be an evening thing, or maybe it's a quick trip and you log into it every so often. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting way to sort of transition using the virtual world. And yeah, I'd love to know, Kevin, if you try one out, it'd be great. So Arthur's talking about some meetings like this one are primarily informative. Others may be a team assessing a big problem or a joint decision making may need to follow. How you vary the tone and style of the meeting and meet the kinds of expectations. Yeah. So for me, really what Arthur's asking is, if you know what's going to be the focus of your meeting, Be really deliberate about how it's structured. Um, and think hard about when are you going to have a break, or when are you going to do this or that, so that there's a way to get the flow of it, so that people have access to participate, have opportunities to participate. And, one thing that I think some people have learned, and you may still be doing this, I don't know, but, update meetings aren't always the most effective way to use the virtual world. Because one, they're not as personal as problem-solving meetings. And so it even becomes more impersonal. And some people, even in the in-person world, stop doing update meetings and move to a different way of structuring that. And having your meetings really around problem solving. Let's see. And now Ellen asks, are you aware of any research about size of groups using Zoom or on other virtual platforms? Is there an optional size and size beyond which you don't want to go? Well, great question. I'm not sure I can answer it specifically. The research it's sort of coming out all the time right now. The thing about the Zoom is it's most beneficial, and it's similar to team size. It's most beneficial when you have enough people, but not too many. So 8 might be tops, 10 might be tops. If you want strong interaction, if you want real-time interaction that's going all the time. If you get too large, it's just like in a committee room, right? You have too many people, you're not going to have the back and forth discussions. And so, yeah. Now, if Teams is coming up with a model where it's like an auditorium. So you have your speaker up front, and everybody's faces are in the gallery looking back at you. So there's innovation going on all the time with this virtual world. I went to some of you may have done this. The Main Biz is the first one I'd seen like that. Main Biz did one where they had it was like a conference, and there you look at this room and you see these tables with chairs, and then some chairs were taken and some were not. And the ones that were taken had like a little head and a name. And so you would say, okay, I'm going to go talk to this person. So you'd sit yourself down in an empty chair, and then their image would come up, their video would come up on the screen. So it was a way, it was actually really, I thought, quite effective for networking. That you could sort of choose who you wanted to be with, and there wasn't that awkwardness of trying to walk over or talk to somebody, but you did have to sort of plop yourself down. Anyway, so the point, I guess what I'm saying is that it's coming out all the time, and companies are innovating. So you kind of want to keep your eye out about what's going on. And then Arthur again, in a team that's at least somewhat hierarchical, who should run the meeting? Well, I have a particular opinion about this. You heard me talk about my book, which is called Connected Leadership, engaging your workforce to lead others. My opinion is that you really need to have that leadership spread around. If you want to grow your leaders in your organization, it's helpful to get them and give them responsibilities and let them experience what it's like. So that would be how I'd answer this. If you have your leader running it all the time, those people that are under this leader are not feeling like they're valued as an individual as much as if they were given some responsibility. And it's difficult. You do have to take some risks, and sometimes it doesn't always go well, but it's an opportunity to learn. And so I view those experiences as opportunities to learn, not as failures. But yeah, so I don't know if that helps, but I'm being perfectly honest about my bias here. So I'm looking at the time, and I just want to make sure we are able to wrap up. We do have a few more minutes for questions, and so please put them in. But some last thoughts for me is just pay attention to your people as people, not so much as employees, and what the differences are. I'll give you an example that I was talking to somebody in a company, and they got a nice, Christmas basket as gifts and thanks for their work. And part of that had a pie in it. It was made by a local baker, so it wasn't a commercial pie per se. But this person was gluten-free. And so she got the pie and she's like, well, that's kind of nice. I got a pie, but she couldn't eat it. Think of the differences that if that person got their pie and it was a gluten-free pie. She's like, oh, so they actually know who I am as a person. So just try to learn if you can about people. Use whatever methods and ways that you can figure that out so that you can make sure you identify them and that they feel connected to you. Build the maintain and trust. That's an ongoing effort. It's really about being open-minded about what's going on, what exchanges, and then the flexible and allow for people to be flexible because the demands are in a different way these days. So right now we have a ray of hope. There was a lot of hopeful signs of those pictures when we started. The vaccines, right? But it's still some unknown, and that adds stress in addition to the situations that people are working in. So I'm going to just, and I'll have to see how Tommy is doing if he's got chat, and I can check myself. But just so you know, thank you to you for coming to this. Hopefully this was helpful for you. If you have additional questions, you can certainly email me. There's my email. And I also want to thank ACE for giving me the opportunity, and certainly the Greater Portland Chamber. These are really great. I've attended a couple myself. And if you're interested in the book, it's there. You can find it on Amazon and too. But here's some other background on me. So let me just see anything else in chat. Yeah, a couple more. Yeah. So hopefully you'll get the information, and the book. We'll find out who gets it after we end here today. And thanks again for everybody for attending.
Well, thank you, Francis, and some great tips and ideas I'm certainly going to utilize in the coming future. If you do wish to rewatch the presentation and want to review the slide presentation, you will be receiving a post-event email with a link to the video, a copy of the slide deck, as well as some other resources to support this topic. If you have any other questions, please send them along to chamber@portlandregion.com. A quick plug for some of our upcoming chamber events. Tomorrow at 4 p.m., our quarterly Kegs and Issues event will focus on Maine. It's outdoor economy. The title is The Outlook for Maine's Outdoor Economy. And we'll have panelists from 4 Maine-based organizations discussing the future as well as the current trends during the pandemic. And on February 10th, our monthly Eggs and Issues will be facilitated by New England Ocean Cluster regarding aquatic-based industries. Strengthening the blue economy, a global responsibility and local opportunity will give us some insight into the organizations and partners contributing right here in Portland. For all of our events, visit portlandregion.com, and thank you all again for attending. Have a wonderful rest of your day.